All right. Welcome to this special episode of Real Estate Fight Club. We are live on the Real Estate Fight Club podcast Facebook page, and we're here with Rachael Real. Hey, Rachael.
Hey, Jen. How are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm good. I'm good.
Good. So this episode is usually like code of professional standards and ethics committee violations. But today we wanted to talk about some of the changes that were made to the code of ethics.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's 2022. So it's a new year. And there are, of course, some changes to the code of ethics.
Do they
so
change
new year, new
every year?
changes. Every year it seems like there's a little tweak here or there.
Okay.
But this year there's a couple of pretty significant changes that are definitely worth talking about, just so that everyone is in compliance and kind of knows and can keep up with what's going on.
The change was not that they blew it up. Is that what you're telling me?
No, it didn't. No, nothing has been blown up yet. We're leaving that up to you.
All right. What are
some
the significant ones that we should know about?
So there's a couple of pretty significant changes, and kind of all of these came out of the discussion with the Department of Justice and NAR about, in terms of the settlement that they're discussing. So, and the Department of Justice wants NAR to make some changes. They've been in discussion with that, for quite some time now, and these all came out of that. Yes, but these changes came out of that discussion.
Okay.
So, significant changes are to Articles 1, 10, and 12.
Okay.
So, and again, it's our job as realtors to know and be aware of these updates to ensure compliance with the code of ethics, and then maintain the integrity of the profession as realtors. The public sometimes can get a little squirrely with our profession, and sometimes it's very justified. So for us, it's good to keep up with these things, know what's going on, and make sure that we're presenting ourselves in an appropriate manner to the public. ... Right. So the first change that happened was to Article 10, Standard of Practice 10-3. Article 10 is essentially the article that discusses discrimination.
Okay.
So Standard of Practice 10-3 states that realtors shall not print, display, or circulate any statement or advertisement with respect to selling or renting of a property that indicates any preference, limitations, or discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, handicapped, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity.
Duh.
Obviously, that's a mouthful, right? Pretty obvious stuff. What that also means, though, now is that we cannot, in terms of our marketing, so we're always in charge of what marketing that we put out on a property that we're listing for sale.
Okay.
So the best example of this would be if you walk into a client's home getting ready to sell it, and they've got a Confederate flag somewhere in their property.
Okay.
As an agent, and from a marketing standpoint, you cannot put a photo or a video of the house out that has a picture of the Confederate flag as part of that marketing piece. HUD also.
No, but you also said religion. So if there's depending on the religion, sometimes there's different symbols put up or different. Absolutely. Maybe all that has to be down.
Not necessarily, but they didn't get down and dirty into the religion part of it. And I think that's, we've had some conversations too in the past about, how far do you take the religion part of this? And of course, I've been into clients' homes that are getting ready to sell. And, some cultures have a prayer room where they have, where they do their praying, and they've got all their, religious artifacts and things up on the wall. I think from a marketing standpoint, you're trying to appeal to the largest number of people to sell a property. Okay. So I think when you use rooms and feature rooms in marketing that are used the most common way. So a bedroom should probably just be a bedroom, not an office, not a library, not anything, nothing other than that. Just because you want it to be appealing to everybody and for people to see photos and not wonder what is that room actually. So there's nothing that says that you have to remove religious articles, religious anything, but the Confederate flag is something that cannot be shown in marketing photos. We don't really seem to come across that quite a bit up in the northern areas here, but in the southern states, we might find that to be more common.
But what if you have is it just a Confederate flag, or is it also other flags? LGBTQ flags or... Well,
and that's something I think it's personal preference in terms of a seller. Obviously, if they want to be able to show that, I think that's probably fine. From an agent standpoint, I always go in and say, hey, we're trying to appeal to the largest group of people here. Let's neutralize this as much as possible. That even comes down to pets. You know, I've got 2 dogs, but if I sold my house tomorrow, I would remove every sign and symbol or evidence that I had a dog in my property.
Right.
Only because not everybody loves dogs.
Most
not
people have,
loves,
I think, right? And if you
they
don't,
they do.
Evil, like, I don't know.
But I mean, if you could see the other side of my screen right now, I have 3 dog beds, 2 blankets, and a dog sitting next to me.
Too
like
much.
Clearly, it's too much.
Well, okay.
My husband's like, we have more places for the dogs to lay in this house than the humans. We have a problem.
Normal. That's normal.
Right.
This change also it's also linked to our conversation that we had, and we did the podcast about what does like the law, I don't know, this feels like a federal law, right? Like it already is a federal law. So like, why does it also need to be in the code of ethics?
Well, and it, like to your point, HUD prohibits the Confederate flag to be shown in photos. So that's a HUD thing, and HUD is the federal government. Okay. So again, those 2 things tie together. I think when you get to religion, obviously there's a much wider variety of things, because if you did that, everybody's house would be completely devoid of anything.
Right.
You know, I think when you're talking about laws and the code of ethics, laws are one thing. The code of ethics is kind of and I don't want to say it's laws for realtors, but it kind of dials things in a real estate perspective. You know, so you could say no discrimination, but take that to apply it to real estate, and then you've got, you know,
so that's what
the code of ethics,
like you can't have it in the marketing. Okay.
Right. So because you don't want someone to look at it and go, okay, well, I might not feel welcome here in this neighborhood or this area or this block or whatever it is with these particular people that may live in the
town means that they are welcome.
Well, taking it down is just a reflection of HUD's rules that you cannot do that, and B, not discriminating against any particular protected class.
Yeah, I'm going to jump off my soapbox here. What's the next change?
So there's a couple of case interpretations that were added to reflect the change of the standard of practice changes for 10-3 and 10-5. So 10-5 is realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, right? All of these things that we know we can't be doing anyway. What they did was the NAR and the Code of Ethics now reflects that to not just be as in your business world, but in your world entirely. Which I know it sounds kind of goofy, but you and I kind of have talked about this before too, and thought, okay, well, if I'm using racial epithets in my personal life, chances are that's carrying over to my professional.
Agreed.
Life.
Yeah.
You kind of can't split that.
But at the same, I agree with that.
Or you're not.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like, when does, like, if racial like slurs are really difficult, because I don't think there's anybody that's listening to this that's like, yeah, you should be able to be a racist. No, like that's not what I'm saying.
Right. No.
I'm saying, like,
I think it's just it's the NAR and the National Association of Realtors way of saying to the public and getting across to the public that we don't tolerate that, whether it's in a business, you know, scenario or personal.
But like but then it's like, okay, duh, right. I agree with that.
Right.
Like,
I almost kind of look at this and go, duh, right. I mean, it makes sense.
And where does the rule end? Like, what's next? Like, next we won't tolerate, like, well, now because we don't want to offend anybody, you can't be religious at all. Do you know what I'm saying?
Because, well, in some of these case interpretations, if you look at the case interpretations that were added, and we can link to those too, one of the case interpretations is a licensee who's also a minister. Mm-hmm. Who is preaching to a congregation. So now you have that very funky line of you're a religious
whatever
person
he says could easily be offensive. Like, I've been in church before and been like, I don't really think that's right. And then now I don't, I don't go there. Or if
right. I mean, there's certainly quite a few scenarios where certain religions might say something that makes you feel one way, and that's going to violate the code of ethics.
And we're not allowed, like, we're like apparently neutral people. Like, when will that rule happen? Do you know what I mean?
No, I get it. I feel like some of these, like you said, some of them are it makes sense. And I think the ones that are going to feel the most difficulty with some of these things are people who are licensees, as well as people that are in a church scenario,
right?
A religious person, somebody that's really going to have to watch and balance what they say to be able to perform their other job, whatever that might be, as well as not violate the code of ethics.
It's going to be interesting to see where that balance is, because I think like
it's a tough balance when you're doing two different things. I could see how that could be challenging, and probably why the case interpretations were written in such a way that they focused on religious leaders, an agent leading a Bible study group, for instance.
Right.
Well, how do you lead a Bible study group and have conversations about things and not offend somebody in the LGBTQ community?
Right.
That can be challenging.
Yeah. And I think if you are listening and you want to hear like us chat about it more, we did do a Better Call Saul episode, which you can find on the Real Estate Fight Club podcast YouTube page, where Rachael and I talked to Saul Klein about it and kind of dive a little deeper into it. What are some of the other changes that are not so like, I don't know.
Right. Well, there's one that we can talk about related to Article 12. And that's being truthful and honest in your real estate communications and advertising. So think about what that might be, and we'll take a break. And when we come back, we'll discuss the change to Article 12.
This is ridiculous. We just need to insert some common sense, I think.
Good luck if you can find that. I'm going to task you with that for 2022.
No,
look for common sense and let me know when you find it. Right.
It's too big. Well, let me tell you a little bit about two of our partners that we have. One is Cyberbacker. So Monica and I have been using Cyberbacker for a while now. So they're virtual assistants. So what they really help with, I know a lot of people are like potentially adverse to it, but they know they need help and they know they need an assistant. And what the Cyberbacker virtual assistants help with is all that tedious stuff that is like simple to do, but it takes time, right? So like posting social media or even coordinating transactions, things like that take you away from generating leads that you know somebody else should be doing. So I'd encourage you to go to cyberbacker.com. You can input Fight Club when you sign up and get information, and you'll love it, trust me. And then the other one is my coach, John Kitchens. So the thing that I love about John is we all have blind spots. And so John will help you get where you're going faster. I don't know if that scares some of you.
Possibly.
But you can sign up for his coach code. So go to coachcode.com and sign up for his newsletters and get some information from him. And he also has a podcast called Coach Code too, which is really good, really insightful, and it will definitely help you. All right, Rachael, give me some. Is there any
excellent
any rules that are not like duh?
I think this one kind of falls into that category a little bit, because I think for years and years and years, what do buyers agents say to their buyers when the first time buyer comes to them and says, all right, I want to buy a house?
It's free to use.
It's totally free. I mean,
free.
My gosh, why should you not use a realtor? It's free.
Wrong.
They can no longer say it is free. Now, I would argue that for years and years and years, we should not have been saying it's free, because the transaction is what pays us.
Right.
If there is no transaction, if there is no buyer, you don't have a transaction, therefore you don't have payment.
Mm-hmm.
So Standard of Practice 12-1 wiped out all language that pertains to payment, and now says realtors must not represent that their brokerage services to clients or customers are free or available at no cost to the clients, unless the realtor will receive no financial compensation from any source for any of those services. So stop it.
I think that's a good rule. And you and I actually agree on this point about
100%.
Doing buyer consultations and having buyer agreements. And I think we did a What Would You Do episode on how if you don't have a buyer agreement, it's actually against the Code of Ethics, correct?
It's against license law. I mean, if you were to get audited by the state of, whatever state you're in tomorrow, and they came in and looked at your files for a buyer, they're going to ask, where's your buyer representation agreement? Now, it can be non-exclusive, it can be exclusive, it can be just a notice of buyer agency. It's got to be something. But part of those documents talks about how you get paid.
Yeah.
So stop telling people that your services are free.
They're not.
This is the perfect opportunity to add value to your customer into that conversation by letting them know this is how you get paid. Mm-hmm. This is the transparency part of it. I did a buyer consult the other day, and I swear they looked at me like I had three heads when I said, here is the listing agreement, because this was a buyer consultation and someone who was also going to be selling. But the example was, here is the listing agreement, and here's how it talks about how we get paid.
Right.
This is what you're being charged. This is how it's divided out. Mm-hmm. Here's myself and this side of it.
Right.
Here's the buyer side of it.
Right.
Now, you can choose what you pay. They're like, what do you mean you can do that? Like they looked at each other and were like, what?
Right.
That's a conversation we should all be having with our clients no matter what.
And I think that's a good differentiator too, to show it from the seller side and say, this is how it works. I mean, for us, we created like our MLS. Well, we operate out of 2 MLSs. One of our MLSs has like a formal agreement. To me, it didn't answer all the questions, because a lot of the questions are like, well, can I do new construction? Can I do for sale by owners? Can I do all this other stuff? Right. And so
now, what do you mean when you talk about your MLS has the agreement? What does that mean?
Have like a form for buyer representation, just like they have a listing form.
Okay.
So, but we have one that is a little bit easier, and it like walks through how, like you said, like how we get paid. And it also walks through, like, answers their questions before they're asked, because that is one of the buyer's main questions, are like, how do we work together? How can you help me? Because all they're hearing on the radio, or all they're hearing from their friends, is like, I found this house. You know, like, how are you as a buyer's agent being proactive to get these people a home? So if people want that, I thought you put yours up there too. Anyway, somebody else has a buyer agreement in there too. They can go to jennifermartin.com/vault, and there's a folder for buyers, and a buyer agreement is in there if your MLS doesn't have one.
Exactly. And like I said, this is an opportunity to have that conversation. Take out a piece of paper and a pen, draw the circle, draw the line down the middle, and explain how the commission is broken out.
Yeah.
The transaction, the best way I can ever come up with that I've encountered as far as how to explain that to a buyer is the transaction pays us.
Right.
We could talk all day long. Is it the seller? Is it the buyer? Well, sure, it's coming out of the seller's side of the closing statement, but it's coming from money that the buyer is giving them. So instead of confusing the hell out of people that way, let's just discuss the fact that the transaction is what pays us.
I agree.
There's no transaction, we're not getting
also paid. Not up for negotiation with currently it's not up for negotiation, because the seller and the listing agent have already decided.
The seller, well, and that's something I think that we might see in the real estate industry in general is there's suits that have been filed by clients who said, well, hey, you know what, I wanted to negotiate with my buyer agent about what their commission is. Or
they wanted a piece of it.
Right. And they're like, well, we can't, because the seller is who sets that. Right. And that is currently the case. So I think we might see a lot of changes in this part of license law over the next couple of years. All the more reason to start
practicing doing your buyer agreements.
Absolutely.
All right, Rachel, we have time for one change.
One more. So we got one more. Article 1, which kind of is the catch-all. Be honest and don't be a jerk. That's just paraphrasing.
Unless you really want to be a jerk, I guess.
Right. Just stop it. Just please stop doing that. So standard of practice 1-7 is one that was put into place, I want to say it was a couple of years ago. Essentially, if you are a listing agent and you have say you're getting multiple offers, right? You got buyer agents that are submitting offers. Buyer's agents want to know, have you presented my offer, and has the seller received it? Have you presented it?
Right.
So 1-7 address that. I want to say maybe 2 years ago or so, don't quote me. That requires the listing agent to, in writing, let the buyer's agent know that, yes, I have presented it and your offer has been presented to the seller and they've declined it, whatever the situation might be. 1-8 adds the flip side to that. So now, as a buyer's agent, I have to submit to the listing agent requirements. I'm now required to submit to the listing agent notice that my offer has been presented, the counter offer now has been presented back to my buyer in writing.
Oh my God.
This does not mean, and this makes sense. I mean, it makes perfectly good sense.
Yeah.
Why would you require it from one side and not the other?
Right.
But the one thing to remember is that when you have a situation like this, that does not mean that you as the agent are required to sit down with your client and say, please sign off on that you've seen this offer and you're declining it.
Okay.
This doesn't require a seller or a buyer participation. It's strictly on the agent.
Yeah, because so many agents weren't presenting the damn offers.
Right, weren't presenting the offer.
That's
so we're essentially
in a lot of markets.
Absolutely. And essentially this comes down to, if you're going to lie about it, we're just going to ask you to put that lie in writing. I mean, that's the best way to explain it. If you're going to lie about it, now I need you to put it in writing so that when I bust you for lying about it later, I've got proof that you did it.
Yeah, it's just like, the problem is like a lot of these rules are made for the few that don't use common sense, aren't nice, don't use good judgment, are not easy to do business with, are really not operating the best interest of their client. But there's so many of us that are. And that's like the frustrating part. It's like, contract is, so many pages and it has all these addendums that say everything that's already in the contract because of this one dumb person.
Because one person screwed it up for everybody. And I think, if you went and took a poll, if you walked down, downtown Cincinnati tomorrow and took a poll and asked 100 members of the public, are you aware that there's a realtor code of ethics? How many people do you think would say, oh yeah, I knew all about that?
None.
I'm totally familiar with it. None.
They also think that they would probably also think that realtor.com is owned by some realtor, which it's not.
There's a lot of, right. And I think this is our opportunity there's plenty of opportunities just in these changes to the code of ethics for us to be able to
they also
reach out to the public.
Means real estate agent, which it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Realtors,
but again, I know. And you really have to be knee deep in this business to understand all these little nuances that we talk about.
I feel like you have to get in trouble to understand. That's how I understand.
That too. But if you asked me, prior to becoming licensed, I went through a transaction where I look back at it now and go, holy hell, I can't even believe that any of these things happened. At the time, I thought they were a little odd, but not even being a licensee, I thought they were a little odd.
Yeah.
But as a member of the public, if you feel like you are in a situation where your agent has done something completely irrational, completely unethical, do you even know that there's a place that you can reach out to that can help you resolve that?
Yeah.
They don't. So there's, there's an opportunity there for education to the public, just in terms of all of these changes, but also, hey, you have resources. If there's something that has happened in your situation, reach out to somebody.
And I think if you're a real estate agent, there's really just 3 rules. Don't be a douche. Honor your word.
I love number 1. I think that should just be in the preamble.
Don't be a douche. Right? Honor your word and communicate. Like, that's it. That's all you have to do.
If you know how successful people could be if they just did those things.
Oh my God. You're going to sell all the houses if you do those things.
If you can just do those things. And when you think about it, these are 3 things that are quite simply basic as hell and not difficult to do.
But we should, when I'm Czarina of real estate of the world, part of the application process to be a realtor is like to have not just references. I want references of people that you didn't put down. I want to know, do they think you're a douche?
You want a background check. But do they require background checks in where you are in Ohio to get licensed?
They just started doing background checks 2 years ago. Other than that, before that, you could be a criminal because you just had check a box that says I'm not a criminal. But in my head, are a criminal, you're going to check the box.
You're checking the box. You're checking no. Come on.
And then when in one of my states, we have an FBI background check. It was nuts.
Wow.
It was like polar.
See, we don't have any of that in Illinois. You just need a pulse.
We know how Chicago realtors are. Sorry, Chicago.
Well, I'm not in Chicago. I'm in the western suburbs, which is
it's the
same 2 different worlds. We have different different board, different forms, different everything. So I don't really cross the line into the city limits of Chicago.
I got you.
Yeah.
Well, Rachel, if people do have a referral for you, or they have a question, or they want to fight with you about these changes, I will
fight with anyone.
No, you're a good fighter. What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Best way to reach me is by cell phone at 630-542-8688 or via email at rreal@dealwithreal.com.
Awesome. I appreciate you being on, Rachel. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
See ya.